Chapter 7. Recognize Others. 1. Kira Sloop remembers it as the worst year of her life. It was 1983, and she was entering the 6th grade. Imagine, if you will, an awkward 11-year-old with a terrible set of teeth, out-of-control curls, and very low self-esteem, she said. Her parents had divorced during the summer prior to the start of school. The one class she looked forward to was chorus. Sloop had a powerful voice and a flair for the dramatic, she said. Relatives told her she should be a country singer. Something happened early in the semester that is still seared into her memory. The students were arranged into groups on the risers: altos, sopranos, tenors, and baritones. The music teacher Dash, a woman with a beehive-ish hairdo and a seemingly permanent frown on her face, led the choir in a familiar song, using a pointer to click the rhythm of the song on a music stand. Then, Sloop remembered. She started walking over toward me, leaning in closer. Suddenly, she stopped the song and addressed me directly. "You there. Your voice sounds different, and it's not blending in with the other girls at all. Just pretend to sing." The comment crushed her. The rest of the class snickered, and I wished the floor would open and swallow me up. For the rest of the year, whenever the choir sang, she mouthed the words. Chorus was supposed to be my favorite thing, she said. My family said I could sing, but the teacher said I couldn't. So I started to question everything. She began to act out, hanging out with the wrong crowd at school. It was a dark time. Then, in the summer after her 7th grade year, she attended a camp for gifted kids in North Carolina called the Cullowhee Experience. She surprised herself by signing up to participate in chorus. During practice, she mouthed the words, but the teacher noticed what she was doing and asked Sloop to stick around after class. The teacher was short and thin, with hair down to her waist. "A lovely flower child," said Sloop. She invited Sloop to sit next to her on the piano bench, and they began to sing together in the empty room. Sloop was hesitant at first, but eventually lowered her guard. She said, "We sang scale after scale, song after song, harmonizing and improvising, until we were hoarse." Then the teacher took Sloop's face in her hands and looked her in the eyes and said, "You have a distinctive, expressive, and beautiful voice. You could have been the love child of Bob Dylan and Joan Baez." As she left the room that day, she felt as if she'd shed a ton of weight. "I was on top of the world," she said. Then she went to the library to find out who Joan Baez was. For the rest of that magical summer, Sloop said, she experienced a metamorphosis, shedding my cocoon and emerging as a butterfly looking for light. And on the heels of her personal defining moment with a teacher came a romantic defining moment with another campmate. See the footnote. She became more and more confident in her singing. In high school, she joined the theater department and played the lead in almost every musical production. She grew comfortable in front of audiences until, in her proudest moment, she sang with her choir at Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall. This was the same girl who had once been told to mouth the words. 2. Sloop's story is moving and inspiring, and here's the biggest surprise commonplace. The sociologist Gad Yair interviewed 1,100 people about their key educational experiences, and he found that many of them had strikingly similar tales to tell. Here's a story that Yair cites as typical. "I was 12 years old. I was regarded by all the teachers as a weak student, and school seemed cold and alienating. My teacher went on maternity leave, and the new teacher declared that she ignores past achievements and starts from a clean slate. She gave homework, and I did my best to succeed. A day later, I read my homework aloud, and the new teacher praised my work in front of everybody. The weak student, the ugly duckling of my class, suddenly turned into a beautiful swan. She gave me confidence and opened a new clean page for me for success, without ever looking back at my dark prior achievements. The similarities with Sloop's story are clear. First, there's a bleak period of alienation and rejection. Then a new teacher appears, offering praise and support, which leads to a transformation. The ugly duckling turns into a beautiful swan. Yair heard stories like this again and again. He titled his research paper Cinderellas and Ugly Ducklings: Positive Turning Points in Students' Educational Careers. Our intention is not to diminish the power of these stories by pointing out their similarities. On the contrary, it's precisely the similarities that illustrate the larger truth. A few minutes can change a life. These moments didn't just happen. Thoughtful teachers made them happen. But how many more defining moments didn't happen because the teachers were tired or distracted or weren't sure how to translate their concern about a student into a meaningful conversation? What if every teacher received guidance about handling students, like Sloop, who seem hurt and withdrawn? It could be included in new teacher training. Here's what we know about how to make a lasting impact in a child's life in a few precious minutes. Of all the ways we can create moments of pride for others, the simplest is to offer them recognition. In this chapter, we'll see why recognizing others is so important, how to handle the moment so that it's most effective, and why the good feelings enjoyed by the recipient can boomerang back to the giver. 3. Carolyn Wiley of Roosevelt University reviewed 4 similar studies of employee motivation conducted in 1946, 1980, 1986, and 1992. In each of the studies, employees were asked to rank the factors that motivated them. Popular answers included interesting work, job security, good wages, and feeling of being in on things. Across the studies, which spanned 46 years, only one factor was cited every time as among the top 2 motivators: full appreciation of work done. The importance of recognition to employees is inarguable. But here's the problem. While recognition is a universal expectation, it's not a universal practice. Wiley sums up the research. More than 80% of supervisors claim they frequently express appreciation to their subordinates, while less than 20% of the employees report that their supervisors express appreciation more than occasionally. Call it the recognition gap. This gap has consequences. One survey found that the top reason people leave their jobs is a lack of praise and recognition. Corporate leaders are aware of this inadequacy, and their response has generally been to create recognition programs like Employee of the Month awards or annual banquets recognizing star performers. But these programs are inadequate for 2 reasons. First, the scale is all wrong. When we talk about the need to recognize employees, we're not aiming for 1 employee per month. The proper pace of recognition is weekly or even daily, not monthly or yearly. Second, the mulish formality of the program can breed cynicism. For example, every Employee of the Month program in human history has been plagued by a similar dynamic. If you judged the award fairly, your best employee would win the award every month, but it seems socially awkward to give it to Jenny every time, so you start concocting reasons to spread the award around, and after a year or 2 of hopscotching among employees, Stuart is the only guy on the team who hasn't won, and it's becoming an issue. So one November you throw him a bone. He has made real progress on his tardiness. And from that moment on, anytime you say the phrase Employee of the Month, your employees will roll their eyes. And pray it's not them. 2-inch recognition experts have advice on how to escape this trap. For formal recognition programs, they recommend using objective measurements, such as sales volume, to protect against cynicism. If Stuart doesn't hit the sales target, he won't win the award, period. The larger point is that most recognition should be personal, not programmatic. In our own research, when we asked people about the defining moments in their careers, we were struck by how often they cited simple, personal events. Here's one example. I was greatly commended by my manager for prepping the back room by cleaning and reorganizing all the bikes for easy scanning for inventory. I felt proud that someone actually took the time to acknowledge my effort. And here's another. A few years ago, I was working in the office when a new client to work with came in. He seemed to be in a bad mood when talking to my coworker. I came out of the back room to see if there was anything I could do. I noticed an error that my coworker and the client didn't notice and fixed the issue for them. The client was so impressed that he demanded to speak to my boss, and he told him how great I was. It was a very empowering feeling, and even though it was a small moment, I do believe that moment is when my boss really started noticing my hard work. Notice the similarities here. The recognition is spontaneous, not part of a scheduled feedback session, and it is targeted at particular behaviors. A classic paper on recognition by Fred Luthans and Alexander D. Stajkovic emphasizes that effective recognition makes the employee feel noticed for what they've done. Managers are saying, "I saw what you did and I appreciate it." Keith Risinger, who works in leadership development at Eli Lilly, has made recognition a hallmark of his management style. Earlier in his career, he managed a team of sales representatives who called on psychiatrists, hoping to convince them to adopt Lilly's drugs for use with their patients. When Risinger visited his sales reps in the field, many of them would bring him to meet their best clients so the reps, would look like stars in front of the boss. But Bob Hughes was different. He asked for Risinger's help in handling one of his hardest customers, whom we'll call Dr. Singh. Hughes was frustrated by his lack of progress with Dr. Singh, who always seemed very interested in Lilly's drugs when Hughes was in the office, yet never prescribed the drugs they had discussed. When Risinger shadowed Hughes on a visit to Dr. Singh's office, he noticed a big problem. Hughes was doing a great job pitching, but he wasn't doing much listening. After the visit, Risinger asked Hughes some basic questions about the doctor. How does he choose medications? How often does he see the patient he's treating? What measures for improvement does he trust? Hughes didn't have the answers. So Risinger challenged him to get more curious about his client, to stop giving a sales pitch and start learning what Dr. Singh thought. Over the next few visits, Hughes began to understand why Dr. Singh had been reluctant to change medications. For example, one of Lilly's drugs, Zolgensma's disguised name, was designed for patients with ADHD, attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder. Dr. Singh saw a lot of ADHD patients, but he consistently prescribed other drugs over Zolgensma. That puzzled Hughes, who thought Zolgensma should be perfect for the doctor's patients. It was effective in treating ADHD, but unlike other medications, it wasn't a stimulant. Dr. Singh himself had praised the drug's profile. So, why wasn't he providing it to his patients? When Hughes started listening, he learned that many of Dr. Singh's ADHD patients were teenagers who came to him during a crisis, perhaps a student whose behavior problems had led him to the brink of a suspension or a failing grade. Patients in crisis needed help quickly. But Zolgensma had a slow onset. Unlike the stimulant drugs, it often required a month or more for its positive effects to kick in. So Hughes suggested an option to Dr. Singh. Why not offer Zolgensma to your patients during the summer, when instant results wouldn't be necessary? Hughes also suggested Zolgensma for adult ADHD patients who might not be comfortable taking a stimulant. Impressed, Dr. Singh began to try Zolgensma with his patients and, liking the results he saw, he eventually became an advocate for it. Risinger was thrilled by Hughes's work. This was exactly the kind of curiosity he wanted to instill in his reps. About a month later, Risinger kicked off a sales meeting with the story of Hughes's progress with Dr. Singh, highlighting the value of asking more questions and listening to the answers. To commemorate the occasion, he awarded Hughes a symbol of his quality listening, a pair of Bose headphones. "That was a very proud moment for me," Hughes said. People in the pharma industry are very intelligent and very competitive. To win that kind of award among your peers means more than being recognized with a bonus, he said. Reisinger began to use tailored rewards more often. To a rep who came up with a customized solution for an individual client, he gave a Keurig single-serve coffee machine, which lets you tailor each cup of coffee to the specific individual drinking it. To those who showed admirable curiosity about their clients, he gave North Face gear that sported the tagline, "Never stop exploring." Pharmaceutical sales reps are well paid, and they can afford their own headphones and coffee machines. The prizes were symbols. With his half-silly gifts, Reisinger created moments of pride for his team members. Maybe your managerial style is different. Maybe thematic gifts wouldn't work for you. There are many approaches to recognition. Some are spontaneous and no-nonsense. The manager above, who complimented his employee for cleaning and reorganizing all the bikes. Some are warm and caring. The teacher who took Kira Sloop's face in her hands and said, "You have a beautiful voice." The style is not important. What's important is authenticity, being personal, not programmatic, and frequency, closer to weekly than yearly. And, of course, what's most important is the message. I saw what you did and I appreciate it. 4. How do you deliver personal recognition when your scale forces it to be programmatic? Imagine a charity with thousands of donors. All of them deserve a thoughtful, personal reply, which is a logistical impossibility. But one charitable organization, Donors Choose, has found a way to scale up thoughtfulness. Its leaders have methodically built a system to deliver recognition. Donors Choose website allows teachers to seek crowdsourced funding for school projects. An elementary school teacher might try to raise $250 to buy new books, or a high school science teacher might seek $600 to order new lab equipment. In an era of school budget cuts, this money from outside donors is precious. For donors, the big moment comes a month or two later, when most of them have forgotten their contributions. They receive a package in the mail full of individually written thank you letters addressed to them by name from the students they supported. Rabia Ahmad and her husband donated some money to buy basic supplies for an elementary school classroom. This was one of the letters they received. "I cried," she said. "These kids, they're actually thanking me for giving them pencils." Ahmad had been resistant to the idea of receiving thank you letters. The site's policy is that donors who give $50 or more will automatically receive thank you notes, unless they opt out, which many do. This is something that no child should be thanking for, she thought. We expect these supplies for our own children. But after talking with the Donors Choose staff, she realized that there were powerful benefits for the students, too. It's not just getting the things, it's appreciating them, and realizing that there are people who want them to succeed. Elementary school teacher Mary Jean Pace used Donors Choose to raise money for recycling bins for her school in Georgia. Many of her students' relatives chipped in, but the donation that clinched the project came from a woman in Arlington, Virginia. A stranger. Pace told her students, "Boys and girls, Arlington is a long way away, and we don't even know her. And she thought what we are going to do is important." Her students were blown away. They couldn't wait to send notes to the woman in Arlington. These thank you letters have been part of the Donors Choose experience since 2000, the year the organization was founded. In the beginning, the organization was sending hundreds of letters per year. In 2016, Donors Choose distributed roughly 1 million. See some recent samples on the next pages. This effort requires serious logistics, including a team of 12 employees and 120 volunteers who help review letters. People frequently suggest that the operations could be made more efficient by scanning letters and distributing them via email. Remember the warning earlier about the soul-sucking force of reasonableness. This act of facilitating gratitude goes against every recommendation about how to scale, said Julia Prieto, a vice president of DonorsChoose who oversees the donor letters. But this is the one thing that people remember about their experience. In 2014, the team analyzed historical data and discovered that donors who opt to receive thank you letters will make larger donations the next year. The letters build commitment. But at DonorsChoose, the findings were almost beside the point. "We're not in the marketing department," said Prieto. "We're not doing this to raise money. We believe it's an essential part of our model. We have consistently bet in the direction of gratitude. DonorsChoose has created a defining moments factory for donors. Rabia Ahmad, the donor, reserves a special drawer in her desk for things she wants to hold on to, like her children's report cards. It's where she keeps the thank you letters from DonorsChoose. Mom, from when I was born to now, you have been impacting my life every day. When I was in high school, you came to every single sporting event that you possibly could, even if that meant you had to leave work early to catch the bus to get there. You were there. It didn't matter if I was playing down in Maple Valley during the playoffs. You were still there bundled in your blankets. Or, if it was pouring rain in the middle of October, you were there in your raincoat. You pushed and pushed and pushed me to do well in school because you wanted me to go to college. I remember the day I was accepted to the University of Montana. We were both able to share that wonderful moment together. I know that if it was not for you, I would not have continued my education, and I thank you for that. Through the toughest of times and through the best of times, you have been there to support me, and I can't honestly tell you what that means to me. All I can say is that I love you with all of my heart. You are such an amazing human being and an even better mother. Thank you for all the time and effort and hard work you have taken into making me the man that I am today. I love you with all my heart." It's clear why this visit would be a peak for Glassman's mother. It encompasses all four elements of a defining moment: elevation, by breaking the script; insight, from hearing how her son views her; pride in his accomplishments; and connection, sparked by the deep emotional message. Both Glassman and his mother teared up during the reading of the letter. But the visit was also a defining moment for Glassman. In fact, he cited it as the third most memorable experience of his college days, behind only graduation and attending the national championship game in football. Researchers have found that if you conduct a gratitude visit, you feel a rush of happiness afterward. In fact, it's one of the most pronounced spikes that have been found in any positive psychology intervention. Glassman experienced it. "It was such an amazing feeling," he said. "I felt almost untouchable." Better yet, researchers say, this feeling lasts. Even a month later, people who conducted a gratitude visit were still happier than their peers in a control group. This is a stunning finding. There are a lot of pleasures in the world that can spike our happiness for an hour. A warm donut comes to mind, but few that can still provide an afterglow a month later. This disjunction, a small investment that yields a large reward, is the defining feature of recognition. A music teacher praises a troubled student's singing ability. A sales manager gives a pair of headphones as a prize. A boss spontaneously praises an employee for prepping the back room. All were moments of recognition that the recipients remembered and cherished for years afterward. If you knew you could make a positive difference in someone's life, that you could create a memory for them that would last for years, and it would take only a trivial amount of time on your part, would you do it? Well, now you know it. Will you do it? During the summer camp, the students took a field trip to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and at one of the places they visited, there was a recording booth where you could sing a famous tune and walk away with your track on a cassette tape. On a lark, Sloop and two friends recorded the Beatles' "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and on the bus ride home to camp, they convinced the bus driver to play it. One boy on the bus listened to the song and loved it, and he remembers it was the first time he'd really noticed Kira. His name was Ross Sloop. 5 summer camps, 9 years, and one remarkable coincidence later, he would ask Kira to marry him. The remarkable coincidence? After college, Kira was working at a store that provided VHS video rentals. A customer returned a video one day. His name was Ed Slocum. Kira went into the store's customer database to mark the video returned, and she happened to notice the name directly below Slocum's in the directory. Ross Sloop, her old campmate. She wrote down his phone number, thereby violating several confidential/privacy statutes, no doubt. She called him later, and the rest, as they say, is history. Great Simpsons moment. Homer is the only employee of the power plant not to have won the Worker of the Week award. Mr. Burns, the owner of the power plant, has called his employees together to announce the week's winner. I can't believe we've overlooked this week's winner for so very long. In the audience, Homer smiles and fidgets. Burns continues, "We simply could not function without his tireless efforts." So, a round of applause for this inanimate carbon rod. The carbon rod receives a commemorative medal while the crowd cheers, except Homer.